What's going on, everybody? Yours truly, Connor, here on this week's edition of the Marvel Roundtable. We are so close to the end of Phase 3 that we take a pit stop and do something a little different as Marvel Studios actually introduces a brand new character, a new hero into the MCU, with Brie Larson taking over as Captain Marvel. But amongst fans and foes alike, this is arguably one of the worst movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But does the fan criticism hold weight, or is there actually some silver lining in this cosmic movie? We're going to take a look at it as we break down 2019's Captain Marvel right here on the Marvel Roundtable. What's going on, everybody? It's yours truly, Conor here. Welcome back to the Horny Goat YouTube channel. Of course, the Horny Goat Podcasting Network, where you can, of course, listen to us on all your favorite podcasting platforms. And, of course, subscribe to youtube.com/hornygoat. It is, of course, Monday. You know what that means, folks. It is the time for the Marvel Roundtable, the show where we break down each and every single movie and TV show in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And boy, howdy, do we have a challenge for you this week. This week is going to be quite a doozy, but we'll get into that in just a second. You guys know me. I am Connor, also known as Mr. Marvel, as 613, if you want to call me that. But of course, I'm not by myself. I'm joined by the esteemed members of the Horny Goat crew. We've, of course, got the tattooed mama herself. We've got Heather. What's up, Heather?
Not much. Just
I know it's exciting stuff. You need to calm down. It's exciting. I know you're pumped for Captain Marvel. It's the one you've been looking forward to the most, but you need to simmer down now. And of course, with us, we've got, of course, Monsieur Bobbit. What is up, Bobbit?
I'm doing good. And I got a joke for you there, Mr. Host.
Yes.
Marvel! Get it? Marvel! Somebody please kill me!
Oh, God. Yeah, this is definitely going to be quite a challenge on this week's episode. So, I want to thank, first and foremost, everybody joining us in the chat. Of course, let us know your thoughts about the Captain Marvel movie with our poll. Give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I would not blame you if you gave it a thumbs down. And, of course, shout out to Alpha Tim Federico joining us in the chat. What's going on, guys? Appreciate y'all coming in and checking things out. If you guys haven't checked out other past episodes of the Marvel Roundtable, because trust me, we've done every single movie up until this point, go check them out. The playlist is in the description if you're watching this over on YouTube. And, of course, like I said, you can listen to us on your favorite podcasting platforms: Anchor, Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, all that fun stuff in between. And of course, we're now on Amazon Music, which is really scary because you could basically say, hey, Alexa, play Horny Goat Podcast Network. And yes, we're on there. So that's a scary thing that we're literally invading everything. That being said, this is Captain Marvel. This is definitely going to be one that I was actually looking forward to because, when looking through these movies, obviously I've seen everything. Clearly, by going by the nickname of Mr. Marvel and having all the Marvel, fucking merchandise out the ass. God's sakes, I have an Infinity Gauntlet, Captain America shield. I have the whole shebang, basically replacing one obsession with another. Go figure. But this was one of those movies out of a slew of some of them, specifically in Phase 3, that I didn't really have a lot of deep recollection about. Obviously I know what the story is, I know the characters, I know what happens, but this movie wasn't as memorable to me as a lot of the others. Plus, as I'm sure we're going to talk about in a little bit here, this is definitely a very left field, and understandably so, from the plan or from the continuity of everything that was Phase 3. Now, I did bring this up, or I was going to bring this up in future episodes, because once we get to Phase 4 of Marvel, Phase 4 Marvel is so different. Not just because of the introduction of the the Disney Plus shows, but also just there's so many different changes and stuff. And actually looking through the original lineup of how Phase 3 was supposed to happen was that Captain Marvel was supposed to happen. Actually, no, it was supposed to happen where it was supposed to be. But basically, we had so many other changes and differences with Phase 3, where we even supposed to have an Inhumans movie in between Avengers: Infinity War and what would be Avengers Endgame, not Infinity War Part 2. But Captain Marvel was still slated to be kind of almost immediately after Avengers Infinity War, not necessarily like, I think it was like a year or so later afterwards. So it's weird. It's a very weird, like, departure. I mean, if you look at the slate for Phase 3, it was supposed to be Civil War and then Doctor Strange, which that did happen, Guardians 2, Thor, Ragnarok, Black Panther. So that kind of all stayed the same. Infinity War then came, and then Captain Marvel, but the Inhumans were also supposed to be wedged in there. But instead, we got Ant-Man and the Wasp. So, yay! I'll take that victory.
Yeah.
I know Heather's so excited about that movie too. But we'll talk about this more when we get into Phase 4 stuff with just how different the schedule was supposed to be and how that could have impacted the writing. But like I was saying, this movie wasn't that memorable to me. And there's like I said in the intro with all this is arguably one of the most universally hated Marvel movies in the MCU. I don't think it's as hated as, say, Iron Man 3, but it's definitely ranked pretty damn low as far as the other Marvel movies. And to be fair, too, again, just like kind of like with Ant-Man and the Wasp, you just came off of a fucking incredible movie with Infinity War literally a year before, and almost anything against that, hell, even Endgame against Infinity War is a tough battle in and of itself. But it's also just the concept of like introducing a extremely powerful character, if not the most powerful character up until this point in the MCU, just kind of out of left field. We didn't know anything about Captain Marvel. We even completely forgot that Captain Marvel was going to be a fucking thing until I think the end credits of Infinity War, where we saw Nick Fury drop what we later find out is actually a beeper, because 90s references. But I'm going to throw this out obviously to Bobbin and Heather real quick. Again, we start things off with trying to like just give a general sense of the movie. Heather, I know you're pumped. I can see the excitement flowing through you. What did you think of Captain Marvel?
Without going too deep into it, this movie really didn't even need to be made. At least not at this point. It should have been way earlier.
Yep.
But I'm also under the understanding that this movie was made more for its fucking soundtrack than the actual character. Courtney Love got paid quite a bit of money.
No freaking
15
kidding.
years after she stopped performing.
No kidding on that one. Bobbit, from your recollection, your overall thoughts about the Captain Marvel movie. I mean,
I don't hate it, but I don't overly love it either. It's one of those movies. Am I going to go out of my way to watch it again? Probably not, but it's still my most hated Marvel movie. We'll get into that when we get into the Phase 4 stuff. But it's okay. It didn't need to be made like Heather said when it did. But it's all right. Not special.
And not to mention, Tim brought it up in the chat here. I mean, she's supposedly the strongest, and yet he waits until now to call her in.
That there is a lot of like there's a lot going against this movie, a lot. And there is I agree in the sense that this should have been introduced. This character should have been introduced so long ago, and it feels like they shoehorned her in basically because, I don't know. It just feels so rushed, and I think that like if you shifted Captain Marvel to somewhere around phase 2, I probably would. I think it would have had a better reception overall. I'm not saying it would save the movie because there's still a lot in the story and the plot and stuff, but I think that is a major part of this movie is the fact that like you literally have the single most powerful character in the MCU, and so I mean, okay, it sort of makes sense to save her for Thanos, sure, but you didn't bring her in for the Loki invasion. You figure that the event, it just just
or even Ultron.
Fucking Nick Fury was barely around for Ultron, let alone it's that's I think the biggest frustration is that like by itself fine, but when you start to really like take a step back and where it fits into the big MCU, which I know we try to analyze these movies by themselves, but at this point we're pretty much at Endgame anyway. It is a huge detriment to this movie in terms of its place. What's up, Paul Arzola? Also joining us in chat. Thank you so much for popping in. Tim said back end of phase 2, really start of phase 3 would have been a better place to drop this movie. I completely agree with you. But I feel like this is one of those episodes that we're just trying to rip the Band-Aid off. I can get that vibe from this movie. So we're going to try and get through this. This might actually be a shorter episode of the Marvel Roundtable because, let's face it, we're all trying to just like barrel through and get to Endgame at this point. So let's talk real quick about the development. So, of course, by May 2013, Marvel Studios had produced a script for a film featuring Miss Marvel, an alias that used by the character Carol Danvers before she took the mantle of Captain Marvel. But later that year, the producers said that the studio was interested in a female-driven superhero film and that had plenty of strong female characters from which to choose, suggesting Captain Marvel, Black Widow, Pepper Potts, or Peggy Carter as possible candidates. Feige, of course, said that if Marvel was to make a female-led film, he would prefer it to be a new character to the MCU, like Captain Marvel, for whom an origin story could be told. In August 2014, Feige stated development had begun on the Captain Marvel film and said that members of the public asked about the project more often than Iron Man 4 or Avengers Infinity War. No offense, I call bullshit on that one. I do, like, look, I'm all in favor of them, like, pushing, like, a strong, we've had these conversations on this channel so many times, not even just, like, the Marvel Roundtable, but in general, like, it's fine if they want to push, like, a female lead, all in favor of it, cool. If it's good, if it makes sense, if the story fits. In February 2015, Marvel pushed the release date back to November 2nd, 2018 to accommodate Spider-Man Homecoming, because obviously, like we mentioned in that review, that Spider-Man deal was kind of like a saving grace that nobody expected for all the pieces to fall in line. And in early April, Feige revealed that Captain Marvel had been included in an early draft of the Avengers Age of Ultron screenplay, but Marvel chose to remove this appearance because they did not want to introduce the character before they were able to explore her backstory and personality first. There's no personality. We'll get to there. He also said that Marvel would announce writers for the film in a few weeks, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into too much detail other than that, but basically, that's kind of where things went about as far as the development of it, which not too surprising, but at the same time, I am kind of a little bit surprised that they decided to kind of push Marvel so far back.
We did the same thing to Black Widow, so are we really that surprised?
Yeah, no kidding. We'll get to Black when we get there. Tim says more than Iron Man 4 I can agree with because of how bad Iron Man 3 was more than Infinity War. But yeah, okay. You know what? Tim makes a good point. He said that like he can understand that people saying they were asking more for Iron Man 3 or Iron Man 4 because of the fact that Iron Man 3 was such a bomb, which okay. But yeah, the Infinity War, I don't believe that. Alpha says funny that they wanted another strong female character when if you look at what makes characters memorable, she has none of the qualities required, almost no substance whatsoever. We'll get into this, Alpha, but like aside from plot stuff, that is my biggest gripe with this movie and with her character. She doesn't have one. She doesn't have a personality. That's the whole premise of the story. But I'm jumping ahead of myself. Let's get into the story itself, shall we? Let's strap in and strap on, because this is going to be fucking fun. Heather, you look like you need a drink or several. You gonna make it?
You know what? That's a good idea. Let me go get one.
I am. I mean, while we wait for Heather to get a drink, don't forget, guys, we will be doing these a couple more times. Obviously, we are on the tail end of the Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 3, so it's getting it's getting down to the wire here, folks. So for those of you who don't know, basically, we have, of course, 2 movies left in Phase 3. Next week, we're going to cover Avengers Endgame, and then the week after is Spider-Man Far From Home, in which case we are done with Phase 3. The plan right now is that when it comes to the Disney Plus shows, we will be reviewing the Disney Plus shows, starting with WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier. We're obviously not going to do an episode-by-episode breakdown. We're going to talk about the series in and of itself, but we will be taking longer breaks in between. So instead of doing shows every week with the Marvel Roundtable, once we get to Phase 4 stuff, specifically with the Disney Plus shows, we will space it out to 2 weeks because I already feel bad enough putting my friends through the torture of watching every fucking Marvel movie. I don't want them to have to go through the torture of watching every single Marvel Disney Plus show. So there's that.
That's kind of why we switched it to doing the show every week, so we can get through the movies quicker to get to the TV shows faster, so that when we can be on par with keeping up with the new movies coming out.
Yes, and we did the math out, and I think that, barring any sort of like hiccups or anything like that, we should presumably have caught up with everything MCU related by the end of the year, which is really fucking crazy to think because we started this at the beginning of the year, and to think that we will basically be caught up with all the Marvel stuff. And then the plan will eventually be to do the Marvel Roundtable once new material comes out. And in lieu of that, we are going to be working on a Star Wars Roundtable, which will be that's going to be a lot of fun too. So nerdum ahoy. But that being said, now that Heather's back and fully alcohol induced, let's get into the movie. So we open up on the Kree Empire capital planet of Hala. Warrior and Star Force member Vers, that's right, Vers, suffers from recurring nightmares involving an older woman. Jan Rog, her mentor and commander, warns her to control her abilities, while the Supreme Intelligence, or organic artificial intelligence who acts as the ruler of the Kree, urges her to keep her emotions in check. So, right off the bat, WTF, but obviously the only thing that we know, and the only thing that's a little bit of a nodge, wink, wink, is Kree. Kree, of course, was referred to in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, which that's another part of this whole thing that just seems a little bit like fucking ass backwards.
This movie should have been done there, right with the first Guardians of the Galaxy, but no.
Well, I think this is another part of it that doesn't help it, is that obviously we'll get to the end of the movie because spoilers, we're going to talk about the entire movie. But like, they flipped the script because obviously the Kree in Guardians are seen more as, they're good. And so there's this predisposition with this, but then like, yeah, it makes it. I think the as much as I appreciated the plot twist towards the end, which we'll get to, the other part of it in me is like, well, it's just lame, because it just, what's the fucking point? Because we know what's gonna happen with them in Guardians, and then just, I don't know, that part, you know what I mean? Like, did that? It just,
not to mention the character that happens to show up in this movie later on.
What's that?
The character that shows up in this movie later on.
Yes. So, speaking of which, while working with the official Ronan the Accuser to rescue an undercover spy, Vers is abducted and subjected to a memory probe by a group of Skrulls, alien shapeshifters with whom the Kree Empire is at war. Vers escapes, and after leaving the Skrulls' ship in an escape pod, crash lands on Earth. Now, a couple things I wanted to note here. When I heard that they were doing the Skrulls, that premise and that concept was very, very interesting to me, because the Skrulls are more interestingly enough, the Skrulls are more synonymous with the Fantastic Four. And not that I was like kind of excited over the fact of, ooh, this could be Fantastic Fourism, because this was years before the Fox thing even was a possibility, but the Skrulls are a major thorn in the side in the Earthlings. And there's the whole secret invasion thing. There is Super Skrull, but I mean, the ability to mimic and copy other people, it's a power that like seems kind of like small scale, but have like major implications. And I felt like that's a really big, not like maybe like a Thanos level threat, but like that's a pretty big fucking high up there as far as the enemy lists in Marvel, and they feel wasted in this movie.
They are. They're turned into good guys in this movie.
Which I'm not, I don't know. This movie just a
They
disappoint.
kind of ruined anything that they can do with them with the Fantastic Four.
Well, no, they're still obviously like they can obviously still have members of the Skrulls like be bad, obviously, like because they've had that with the Kree. But I remember the Skrulls being a major threat in the Fantastic Four series and other crossover events, and then just to have them in this movie, which I was kind of excited for, but then like, okay, they're good, like it just I don't know, it just. And again, I try to go back when I rewatch this, trying to go with the open mind of like, listen, I know a lot of people shit on this movie. I'm going to try and go into it with like a neutral mindset, but man, it's really really tricky.
It is. It's really tricky because most of us saw it when it was still brand new. Granted, it may not have been in theaters for all of us, but it was still new when we saw it the first time. And there was so much hype around this movie. And I was excited for it because, okay, we're getting that strong female lead. And then we get somebody who sounds like she's reading off of cue cards with every single one of her fucking lines.
And that kind of, we might as well talk about this now. Brie Larson is, and the thing is, Brie Larson is a good actor. She has done roles outside of this that were pretty good,
Better.
and she can act. So it's not like she's a shitty actor. The problem, and this is something I forgot to mention in the pre-production notes, but I might as well mention here too. Infinity War, Endgame, and Captain Marvel were, from my understanding, and please, anybody listen to this can please correct me if I'm wrong. They were all roughly filmed at the same time, ballpark, obviously. I know Infinity War and Endgame definitely were, but the reason is because I believe they did Infinity War and Endgame first, and then they filmed Captain Marvel, despite Marvel being released first. And the problem, the reason that's important is because I believe at the time the writers, not that they figured it out in the movie, but were still trying to figure out her character, which, like I said, is my biggest frustration with this. Like, yes, they explain characteristics about her. She has memory flashbacks of it, but very little characterization comes through because she can't fucking remember it. So it's hard, like it's really hard for us to kind of like get invested in this character when she says so many times she doesn't know who she is. So that's kind of, it's kind of tough. It's different if it was a character that was well established and then went through the amnesia wipe. We've seen that in sitcoms. We've seen that in all these different things where like people don't know who they are and they're trying to piece together. But this is a brand new introduction to essentially a new character that I don't know. That's really, I think, the core crux of my problem with this movie is that they're trying, like, on one hand I appreciate some of the differences they were trying to do with this, but at the same time it's like I can't get emotionally invested in this character when she doesn't know who she is and we're being told, as opposed to having previous connections with her in other instances. You know what I mean? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, it does. And frankly, she has this issue of certain movies she can do really good, and then you get those movies where she doesn't know what she's doing. She doesn't know what she's doing, and then on top of that, you have the fact that she's filming the scenes for Endgame before her character origin story is even fucking done.
Yeah.
And even through doing her origin character story, she doesn't know how this character's supposed to be.
Well, we're told, but we're like forced. My point is that like we like origin story's fine, But like the way they did the origin story is just, it makes it difficult for us, as, and when I say us, I mean like an audience, and I don't want to speak on anyone's behalf, but like it makes it harder for us to get involved and invested in the character. It's different if we had like a Captain Marvel movie where everything was explained and then she got amnesia in the sequel, and then we had to undo it, and like a help with her, like that's where I felt like it kind of differentiated. But I mean, Bob, I don't want to I want to give you a chance to speak too. Did you am I making sense with my analogy here?
You're making perfect sense with your analogy, being 100% honest with you.
I mean, what did you think about the opening? I mean, might as well talk about the acting overall, or lack of acting overall. I mean, that's kind of what I felt was like the biggest, the core of the problem of the whole thing. Well, the character.
I like Brie Larson, but she cannot act worth a fuck. Like, good mother of God.
Well, she's been decent in other things. It's just this, I don't know what the hell happened.
She was acting like that she didn't want to be there.
Well, that's part of the problem. Is, I'm not sure if you heard me say this earlier, but like the part of the problem is that, like, presumably, and I could be wrong. I don't want to, like, I could be mistaken in this. So please, if anybody's listening to this, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I believe they were filming this Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame roughly all around the same time. So they were developing her character as they were injecting her into the biggest fucking movie of all of the MCU.
There's your problem right there. They were trying to they're trying to get too much out of her, and of course her performance is going to struggle if you're filming 3 fucking movies at the same time.
Tim does make a point, like, also almost like Larson needs to be invested in the movie to be a good actress, almost, or more specifically, invest in the characters she's portraying. I mean that's part of it, obviously. You know, if actors or actresses aren't gonna, they're just gonna phone it in. Which I get that performance from this. I completely get that performance from this. That she seems like she's phoning it in, but at the same time, it's like technically her character is figuring out her character or who she is throughout the whole course of the fucking movie, which, I'll be honest, it's kind of the reason I want to see the Marvels, the sequel that's been announced, which will supposedly feature Photon and Miss Marvel as well as Captain Marvel, because now there's no fucking excuse. Now if the movie tanks,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, now you have plenty of setup beforehand. But I digress. I mean, but Bob, what did you think about the Skrulls being the enemy in this one? Were you kind of let down?
I liked it. I liked it because I wasn't too sure who the villain would be in this movie, because I didn't know Captain Marvel all that much going into this.
Right.
And yeah, it was really nice to have them. I hope they're still gonna be the villain in the Fantastic Four movie that's coming eventually.
Well, there's still always chances that they can add the Skrulls in. And I don't know if you heard me say this earlier, but like, part of me was kind of bummed because the Skrulls are pretty high up there on the chain as far as Marvel villains. And granted, I know they were trying to flip the script on this whole thing, which, that's the other part of it too, is just like the Kree being who they were, but we saw them as the Innocents and Guardians, which happens afterward. It's fucking confusing. It's a little all over the place for me.
And correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the Skrulls the people that leads up to Krang the Conqueror?
No, but I mean, a lot of villains could be interconnected depending on the story that you want to tell. You know what I mean? Trust me, we'll get to Kang the Conqueror when we get to the Loki season 1 review, which that's, oh man, that might take a while. But I mean, you know, there's Easter eggs all throughout all the Marvel movies which I cannot for the life of me go through all of them, because God damn it, I do have a life. You know what I mean? And we all have lives, and we can't be here that long. So, but moving on. So Veers crash lands on Earth. Her presence attracts the attention of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents Nick Fury and Phil Coulson, who are investigating, whose investigation is interrupted by a Skrull attack. I do love this, that she crashes through a blockbuster, and a couple things I wanted to mention about this when I noticed this at this part. Obviously, number one, it's never time-stamped. It's never time-stamped until... Actually, they never time-stamped in this entire fucking movie. And it's not until you do some math. I think there's a scene later on where they mention the year and they're like, oh, this happened 6 years ago in 1987, which if you do the math out, it's 1995. But they don't timestamp the movie whatsoever. And it's not until she crashes through a goddamn blockbuster that you put two and two together like, oh, this is an older movie, or this took place in the past. So she crashes through the blockbuster. And I do love how she's like, I need help with your communications. Where can I get some communications technology? And the guy points to a fucking Radio Shack. Jesus, I'm old. So she eventually tries to contact the Kree, but then of course Nick Fury and Phil Coulson show up, and of course they get interrupted by a Skrull attack. In the ensuing chase, Veers recovers a crystal containing her memories, and Fury kills a Skrull impersonating Coulson. Fury later meets and agrees to work with Veers, while Skrull Commander Talos disguises himself as S.H.I.E.L.D. operative Keller. So, I got a kind of quick buddy cop vibe out of this, and here's the thing is that with the whole mystery of Veers and like her memories and stuff, it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's kind of a nice little thread that kind of keeps things going with the story, and it's adding an extra layer to it, which cool. But at the same time, as far as like your key, again, and I'm going to beat a dead horse with this, your main character, the one that is going to essentially carry on, that we know is going to be in the next fucking movie, and the biggest movie, therefore. How am I like? Why do
what
I?
Emotional investment am I going to get into this character by the end of this movie that you think is going to make this movie good? At this point,
they lean too heavy on the wrong parts, in my opinion. I mean, like I said, the idea of like the mystery being about and the plot twist at the end, okay, but yeah. I think that's the biggest crutch of this, is that like they didn't know where to put the priorities with it. Fury doesn't age worth shit. I don't give a fuck what sort of magic Hollywood makeup they use. The man looks fucking fantastic every time I see him. I bet you that was not CGI they used to fucking de-ageify him. I think he just put on like fucking makeup and he just looks that young. Because I don't know what sort of weird purple lightsaber Jedi bullshit this guy fucking pulls, but he has found the fountain of youth, and that man looks fantastic every time I see him. Hell, even in the Secret Invasion photos that we've seen with him with like gray hair and like the bad eye, he still looks better than I do.
Yeah, if it wasn't for his gray hair in certain places of his beard, you would not think that this man aged at all.
Seriously. So now Fury has agreed to work with Veers. I also did like the fact that Coulson is a rookie, and that he could have had the opportunity to turn Nick Fury in, but he chose not to. And so it just kind of like a little of the tip of the hat of the relationship between Coulson and Fury, and showing like a little bit of that. So again, there are pockets of this that I do enjoy. It's just everything else sucks. So using Fury's security clearance, Veers learns that she was a pilot who was presumed to have died 6 years earlier while testing an experimental light-speed engine designed by scientist Wendy Lawson, who she recognizes as the woman from her nightmares. They also explain that the supreme intelligence of the Kree takes the form of somebody that they know in their brain, and this woman's form is obviously, in her mind, but she can't like understand, like, I can't remember where you come from. The two escape after Keller, which is really Talos in disguise, confronts them with Lawson's cat Goose stowing away and pilot a small cargo jet to Louisiana. A meeting with fellow pilot Maria Rambeau and her young daughter Monica reveals Veer's real name is none other than Carol Danvers. So I know I kind of breezed through a lot here. First of all, Goose is the fucking best character in this movie, bar none. No, I'm kidding, obviously, but I don't know, something about the cat is just very amusing to me. It's the that's the comic relief that like is perfect for this type of movie. You know, I mean, there's obviously little jokes and things here because, you know, you have Nick Fury and the kind of bouncing around and whatnot, but like Goose is like the perfect like comedic foil where it's like you don't need a goofy character, you don't need one-liners all the time. You have a fish out of water situation, and well, obviously the shit that happens with Goose throughout the movie.
It's fucking gold.
Yeah, it's good shit. Like that I actually appreciated.
I wish they had the CGI better for certain scenes with that.
I know. You know what's interesting? When we're now on what? We're getting close to like the 20th movie that we're doing. And it's still intriguing to me that like Marvel can sometimes knock it out of the fucking park with the CGI. I just found out spoilers for Doctor Strange. Heather, you've seen it, right? The second one?
Not yet. I'm gonna be watching it tomorrow if he goes into the office.
Okay. Have you heard the spoilers about who's in it and blah blah blah?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know. I'm trying not to say it.
No,
So
I know about that.
huh?
You can still say it. I don't. You can still say it. I'm not one that cares about spoilers.
Okay. Spoiler alert for Doctor Strange 2 in 3, 2, 1. Black Bolt makes an appearance. And what I thought is that he was wearing a suit. He wasn't. The entire suit was CGI. And it's like, that looks incredible. And then you have the Moon Knight truck incident.
It's like that, and you have fucking Goose the cat looking like the live action version of Garfield.
Like, yeah, there's a couple of moments where he's like crashing up against the crates. I'm like, what the fuck is that? It just baffles me sometimes. Anyway, anywho, so I do love that. Like the other thing that I actually enjoy is the bonding experience between Fury and Veers, or Carol Danvers at this point. We do see like a moment where like she explains like who Skrulls are, how they're able to differentiate, and how they're able to detect if a Skrull is in disguise or not, which I didn't even fucking remember this, but that they only have short-term memories. They don't have long-term ones. So
we get the most recent memories of the people they mimic.
Right. So it's not like they don't have the entire history of the person, which is a nice little flaw, like I do like when you have like these shapeshifters and type that like there's obviously some sort of fundamental trait that makes you being able to like somewhat distinguish them. It's not necessarily the easiest, but you can, same thing goes with the whole Nick thing. Nick's not called Nick. He's called Fury. What's your mom call you? Fury. What do your kids call you? Fury. So just getting little shit like that. But I do love the bonding moments between Carol Danvers and Nick Fury, because it later establishes a little bit of Fury's mindset, obviously, as far as S.H.I.E.L.D., and then what we would eventually later obviously find out to be the Avengers Initiative that he writes. So, for all the shit that I give the movie specifically about the way they treat Captain Marvel, there is little continuity. It's so interesting that there's like continuity nods that they do a very good job of threading very well, and there's one big one that just makes me want to piss in a bucket and throw it in Disney's general direction, but we'll get there. But the idea that she now has, she presumably died, and she now meets over with Monica and Maria Rambeau. So Talos tracks her down and arrives and asks to speak. Using the black box recorder of Lawson's crashed plane, Danvers learns an alien spaceship had shot it down, and that she now remembers that Jan Rog killing Lawson, as well as Lawson's warning that the experimental engine's energy core had to be destroyed to keep it away from the wrong hands. Veers shot it and was caught in the ensuing explosion. With her body absorbing the energy, Jan Rog brought the amnesiac Veers, the remaining portion of Danvers, on her broken dog tag to Hala. So at this point, it's now the exposition is wide open. It's revealed that basically that the Skrulls are not really bad guys. They're just refugees trying to find a way to get away under the tyrannical Kree rule, and that the Kree really kidnapped her, meaning Carol Danvers, after she became immensely powerful. So I don't know about you guys, but did anyone else find it a little hard to believe that like you have Carol Danvers has this immensely cosmic abilities. You mean to tell me that in the 6 years she's been with them, she didn't find the ability to like overthrow them and do whatever the fuck she wanted? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it just, I don't buy that. I just don't buy that.
It goes along with them kidnapping her with no memory to begin with, so they could plant any seed they want into her brain and tell her
True.
anything to get her to believe, this is what you are, this is who you are, this is what your life has been up to this point. Um, Also, it's just with that scene, did anybody else feel like Marvell or Wendy Lawson, as she's called at this point, just at that point, you just, oh, oh, wait, we have to blow up the engine.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. And yes, Tim, basically when Carol Danvers shot the engine, the residual energy from it hit her and it just mixed with her, which is very interesting because not the last time we're going to see those same kind of powers mixed in with her, and that's pretty much all she wrote as far as we know. But yeah, I do know what you're talking about, Heather, with the like we got to destroy the engine.
It's not even just that. It's just like, oh well, we crashed. All right, I need to get up and do a job now.
Yep. I did like the veers being the broken half of her dog tag. I at least thought that was kind of clever. Because I'm like, where the fuck are they getting veers from? And they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So once again, Talos explains that the Skrulls are simply refugees and Lawson's engine was to help them escape beyond Kree reach. Using coordinates Lawson had given Danvers, she, along with Fury, Monica, and Goose, who for some reason terrifies Talos, fly their Skrull-modified cargo jet to a cloaked ship in orbit. So at this point, Jan Rog has basically tried to warn off Ronan, saying, listen, we know where we don't want to excuse me. They know where Veers is, but they don't want to have like the full force come in because they want to just pull her out and get her out of there before any craziness happens. But at this point now, he's like, well, fuck that plan, because he quickly figures out that now she knows. So there they find the source at the cloak ship. They there find the source of the energy core's power, which is none other than the Tesseract. And some Skrull refugees, including Talos' mate and child. Okay. This is the hill I'm going to die on. The last time we saw... I'm sorry. In the timeline of the MCU, the Tesseract was in the possession of the Red Skull. He used it, flew up, and he got replaced with a bad CGI replacement in Infinity War. It fell into the ocean. We saw at the end of Captain America that Howard Stark retrieved it. So where the fuck did Lawson get the hold of it?
Mm-hmm.
That... I will at least give them credit in the sense of the end credit scene that we see, where we see Goose coughing up the Tesseract, which at least that somewhat made sense, but I don't understand how
that other gap between World War II and 1987.
So one thing that you guys will probably hear me say numerous times, if you haven't already on these reviews, is that there is a plus and minus with the MCU. The plus is that you have continual great stories building off of movies and characters that have been well established years before. Problem is that when you have something that's been around that fucking long, you're bound to end up with hiccups in continuity. this is fucking one of them, and I'm gonna bash someone's fucking head in. Because when I saw that, I'm like, that is bull to the shit. Because unless that Howard Stark was a Skrull, who knows? Maybe he was. I don't fucking know. Everyone's a Skrull. Ugh. I get it. In the grand scheme of things, it's a really small thing to fucking nitpick at. I understand that, but for me, it just infuriated me. However, what this also basically confirmed was that Captain Marvel's powers came from an Infinity Stone.
Yes.
So when we get to other things, hint, hint, WandaVision, some things will sort of kind of make sense. Which we'll get to when we get to certain other things of Phase 4. But Bob, I don't want to keep I don't want to keep you out of the loop here. What did you think about all this so far?
I agree with you 100% on that. The whole how the fuck did she get the Tesseract is beyond me. And so far, like, this is where I stopped paying attention because it was just.
This is where.
I mean, it was boring the shit out of me, so I was like listening to it, kind of watching it, but not really. This movie lost me completely.
I feel like
It really didn't lose me. It just couldn't keep my attention.
Yeah.
Even that's one thing I will say with this movie is even if you don't really pay attention to it, you can still understand the full story by the end of the movie. That's the one good thing about this movie.
Mm-hmm.
You can understand it, and then the end credit scenes explain even further as to why this character is so important. But it's just one of those things of you need to do your review of your movie just slightly better. It tried to follow the same formula as all the others, but it kind of went off on its own little path with certain points and certain directions the story was going. However, you also had this main character portraying lines as if she only just learned them that morning.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I think that like the movie had an uphill battle from the get-go. In the sense of you're introducing a new character right before Endgame. You want to make it a good, strong female lead. You want to make sure that the continuity fits. You're doing it in a time period that we've already passed, both past and future, in the 90s. And then on top of that, you're trying to do this like mystery, like, amnesia story. So it's just there's so many things going on with this movie that are against it. Some of it against their control, some of it in their control. And I think that's the reason why this just like it's just not. There are aspects of this movie that I enjoy, bits and pieces here and there, little nods, little acting moments, but woof. Woof.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the fight scenes in the beginning, you have her with her hands bound up, and she's turns around and goes, "Anybody can get these off? No?" She's like, "Wait at least 2 fucking seconds before you spew the next fucking line."
So, So Yon-Rog's Star Force, having trapped them, captures Danvers and places her in VR before the Supreme Intelligence. Enraged at being used, Danvers fights back and discovers that a Kree implant that purposely gave her Kree powers was instead limiting them. So there goes my answer. Accessing her full force, Danvers escapes, giving the Tesseract to Fury for safekeeping, and battles the Star Force to give Rambeau time to fly herself, Fury, and the Skrulls to Earth, along with Goose, who is not a cat but an alien known as a Flurkin that can sprout powerful tentacles and who insides are a pocket dimension where the Tesseract is placed. Because fucking why not at this point?
Right.
Rambeau shoots...
Also, like 4 of the fucking Krees.
at least. Rambo shoots down a pursuing mini Minerva. Danvers then chases an escaping Yon-Rogg and discovers the extent of her powers, including fucking flight. She single-handedly destroys multiple ballistic missiles that Ronan, called in by Yon-Rogg, has fired at Earth and forces Ronan to retreat. On Earth, Danvers quickly defeats Yon-Rogg and sends him back to Hala with a warning to the Supreme Intelligence. I will say that was probably one of my favorite parts of the entire movie, where like you're expecting this big dramatic showdown from like the earlier conversation where it's like, I told you the only way to beat me was to like, overcome yourself, and she just fucking blasts him and is like, fuck that.
It's the Indiana Jones scene. Guy's wailing around a knife,
Yeah,
and Indiana
basically.
Jones takes the gun out and shoots him and then walks away.
Yeah, because fucking why would she at this point? She has nothing to fucking prove. That's probably the only part I like. That's one. I think the ending was okay.
I do have one question with that scene though.
Yeah.
This is where I was half paying attention. When she was falling down through space in the atmosphere.
Yep.
She closed her eyes and then opened them again. Did she evaporate through the earth to teleport back up?
Mean when she flew?
I'm saying in that scene when she opens her eyes, it looks like she's like enveloped in the earth.
Or it could have been the energy source, because I do notice that there's a couple of times where like the energy source like looks like she's wearing almost like a second skin. So take your pick. CGI. So Danvers agrees to help the Skrulls find a new homeworld, giving Fury a modified pager with which to contact her in case of an emergency. Fury later drafts a proposal for an initiative, changing the name after finding a photo with Danvers' old call sign of Avenger. Also wanted to note that this is also how he found out how Nick Fury got his eye patch, because fucking Goose scratched him. I love those war stories. Of course, in present-day mid-credit scenes, Danvers meets with the Avengers, Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, Bruce Banner, and James Rhodes, who are trying to monitor the pager Fury had activated, which I think that was probably one of the better written ways to get her, like, you know what I mean? Like, they did the whole thing, and then, like, that's the way to introduce her. And, of course, like I mentioned before, in the end credits flashback, Goose coughs up the Tesseract, which makes sense that Fury would have in his possession. Not how the fuck Lawson got it. I'm getting off the topic. Anyway, this is the shortest Marvel Roundtable review we've done in a while, and there's a reason for it. Because, this is a tough pill to swallow. And so I'm gonna give the floor to Heather on this one, because we're actually going to wrap this one probably a little bit on the earlier side. Alpha did say real quick in the chat, I find it funny that the character's name is Carol Danvers when Danvers is also the name of a now demolished mental hospital in Massachusetts. I'm well familiar with that one. Tim said better choice for the power source would have been the Power Stone, I feel, or whatever the one that was found from the Guardians movie. Can't remember the planet's name. Yes, you are right. That is from the oh my god, Xandar. Couldn't think of the name of it. Xandar is the name of the planet where the Power Stone came from, which would make sense. But we'll later hear on, like I mentioned before, that we're going to hear that other characters get powers from the Infinity Stones, which, yay or nay on that one. Heather, your overall thoughts on Captain Marvel, rating out of 10, let him have it.
This movie was such a letdown. Again, you take out that last end credit scene where she's being introduced to them, and take that and put it at the very beginning of Endgame, and then put Captain Marvel the movie back by, say, Winter Soldier.
Yeah, okay.
Around that phase, around that era of movies, and you might have had a better movie.
Mm-hmm.
And you would have had things make so much more sense going through the timeline, other than shoehorning this in so that you can make the last thing Nick Fury does in Infinity War something super important that you have no clue what the fuck it is.
Right.
You would already know, oh shit, he's calling her in finally.
there does raise a bunch of questions. Like, obviously, like, there's parts of this that make that line up, because Fury even says in the movie, he's like, I was more concerned about enemies we had on Earth. I never thought of looking above, meaning space. So it put Fury in the sense of having this like mindset, almost like Tony after the first Avengers movie, that like you only see the enemies coming from here, you don't see them coming from above or outside of the Earth. And so having fucking Captain Marvel literally come out of the fucking sky, it makes sense that it would change his perspective on the way to kind of go about these things. But on the flip side of that is the same thing of like, well, why the fuck did you not call her when Loki invaded? Now,
Or when Ultron was born,
what's that?
or when Ultron happened, or
Which of course you could chalk up to any sort of argument you want in that, in the sense of like, well, Nick Fury already had the Avengers in his back pocket. He figured the Loki situation wouldn't get as crazy. It wouldn't necessarily need Marvel, you know, or the situation didn't call for it. Whatever the excuse you want to use. But it does kind of like raise an eyebrow. I think personally, and granted, we've talked about this before, that the MCU was technically supposed to end at Ultron, so there was not even any plans for Captain Marvel at this point in time. But if they made references to her, or at least something referencing this movie in previous other movies, little ones even, would have like, hey, what made you think of the word Avengers? Oh, it's from a pilot I knew. Like something like that, like just, or like little shit like that would have helped kind of build things up a little bit. And so, but anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you on that one, but I'm just kind of piggybacking off what you said there.
It's exactly the same point I have. You had the time, you had the entire list of characters available to you to create this fucking universe. And you don't think about doing something like this sooner when you make her so fucking important?
I would argue that, and I'll throw this out to you guys, I kind of would have put the Black Widow movie here.
Yes.
I would have put the Black Widow movie here. And then I guess the question I should ask is, well, no, because they've done that before. I was gonna say, would it be a detriment to have done Captain Marvel after Endgame? I don't think it would have. I think it would have done better for it, to be honest with you.
Wasn't it actually fully released shortly after Endgame?
No, it was right before it.
Okay.
Because I was thinking about like, well, that would be, I literally thought in my head, well, that would be stupid to introduce a character and not have them have an origin story when they fucking did that with Black Panther.
Yeah.
So they can do it here. But anyway, overall thoughts, overall rating out of 10 for Captain Marvel.
It's good. This is gonna be a 3 for me.
Funny, I was thinking the same number. Senor Bobbitt.
I can't put it at middle of the road because this is not a middle of the road Marvel movie.
No, it's definitely subpar. Which sucks because there's a lot of cool things and there's tidbits I like. I'm not saying that this movie I absolutely hate, but it's definitely there have definitely been far worse Marvel movies, but there have been infinitely better ones for sure.
Yeah.
Hell, I would say this is definitely, it's not the worst MCU movie, but it's definitely like I think Iron Man 3 is still the worst.
Iron Man 3 is always and forever going to be the worst Marvel movie.
Yeah.
Unless Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special ends up being Star Wars Holiday Special quality, then
I don't think it's going to be. God damn it, I trust James Gunn and so should you. But I think this is definitely the worst in Phase 3. I will definitely say that without a doubt. Senor Bobbitt, the floor is yours, sir. Give us your thoughts on Captain Marvel. What would you rate it out of 10?
Oh God,
I know. Squeeze it out, baby.
I don't overly hate this movie, but I don't overly love it and go on my way to watch it when it comes on TV or whatever. I'm like, oh, Captain Marvel's on. I'll change the channel. But for the purpose of review, I went back and watched it. I still have the same feelings now that I did when I first seen it. This gets a 3 out of 10 for me, and this is not the worst. Iron Man 3 is not the worst Marvel movie to me. That is coming up in Phase 4.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
So, yeah. Yeah.
I know
3
which one
hours
you're
of
talking about.
bullshit and nonsense.
We'll get there. We'll get there. I mean, I'm pretty much in the same boat with you guys. You know, our Twitter poll, our YouTube chat poll did say 75% thumbs down for Captain Marvel. I mean, obviously, a thumbs up, thumbs down is really hard to gauge because it's one of two results. Although it's funny, most of them, almost all the Marvel reviews we've done has gotten at least a thumbs up, or at least majority thumbs up, if not close to majority thumbs up. Even Iron Man 3, I think, got pretty like 50-50 close, but this one got a pretty pretty down there vote. It's the writing for me. It's the writing and the character. I'm beating a dead horse here, but those are really the two biggest the biggest things that I did not like about this movie. It is almost impossible for me to get invested into a character when the character doesn't know who the fuck she is. On top of that, I think there are way too many things going against this movie in the sense of shoehorning in a brand new character that is super powerful right before your biggest blockbuster that you've ever made. You're trying to push a female lead, which I'm not saying is necessarily inherently against it, but I'm just saying is you're trying to do a lot in one movie. You're trying to stay nostalgic, but also make continuity as much as possible. But there's going to be continuity slip-ups, like I've mentioned with the Tesseract shit. I think they were just trying to squeeze out one more big movie before they could get to Endgame. So, yeah, I'm right there with you guys. 3 out of 10 for sure. Now, I'm going to throw this odd question to you guys. Now, the biggest complaint that I've mentioned before is the fact that Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, was trying to figure out who she was, so it was hard for us to get involved with the character. Now that we know very full well who she is, what she's capable of, and blah, 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 The Marvels is going to be the next big movie following Black Panther Wakanda Forever. So at the time of this recording, Thor Love and Thunder is coming around in a couple of weeks. The next movie after that is Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Then The Marvels, which is supposed to feature Captain Marvel, Maria Rambeau, all grown up, and Miss Marvel all coming together. Do you think now that this movie is at least out of the way, do you think that maybe it has a better chance than this original one?
I would hope it does. However, I don't know if it will because of the fact that it's Brie Larson coming back, and we've all heard the stories from the other cast members that she's not the greatest person to work with, and we don't really like her, and blah 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 blah. According to the tabloids and all that.
So that aside, though, let's say that's a non-factor. I'm talking just in terms of like we now know roughly who Carol Danvers is. Do you think now they have a better shot at making a better, essentially a Captain Marvel movie?
I don't know, because we're also talking about a company that'll rush something out to get it out there for the biggest money grab they can take.
True, but they have been pushing back a lot of movies lately too. So it's
a double-edged sword. They have the ability to do it right and make it better than what this one was, to make up for what this was. But I don't think they're going to care enough to actually try.
Tim says in the chat real quick, it does have a better chance because we already have Miss Marvel, the show, so they don't really need to make it a pure origin story, which is true. There's actually, and we'll get more into this when we get into WandaVision, but there's a couple of characters that they can really play off of because obviously Maria Rambeau has a little bit of hostility towards Captain Marvel when she's all grown up. And then Miss Marvel is obviously a mega fan of Captain Marvel. So I think that there is some Three's Company elements that they could probably pull off in this movie. So I mean, I'm trepidatious. That's for damn sure. For many reasons. But I just want to throw it out there to you guys. But yeah, I think that covers it. I think we've done our shortest review of a Marvel movie, and rightfully so, for a good reason. Want to thank everybody who joined us here on the chat live, for checking this out on the Marvel Roundtable. Bobbit, Heather, any last-minute thoughts on either Captain Marvel or anything before we wrap up this relatively short edition of the Marvel Roundtable?
Bobby, you first.
Not really, other than I can't wait for next week.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be a doozy. Heather, any last-minute thoughts for you?
If somebody tells you that they have something that'll help you sleep, and you fire back with, "I'll just be sleeping then," I won't punch you in the face.
Oh, fuck, I forgot about that line. God damn it. God damn it. Anyway, thank you all for tuning into the Marvel Roundtable. Again, make sure if you're here on the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up if you guys like what it is that we do. And check us out on all your favorite podcasting platforms on the Horny Goat Podcast Network, Anchor, Spotify, Google, and all those fun in between. Next week, ladies and germs, it is 4th of July, and boy howdy, do we have some fireworks for you. Next week, right here on the Marvel Roundtable, we look at the top grossing movie, not just in the MCU, but for a brief time, the top grossing movie in cinematic history. We see finally Earth's mightiest heroes try to avenge the loss from Infinity War. As we try to go and explain time travel, I'm going to need a drink for this one. As we're joined once again by hopefully our friend Frank from the Harsh Truth Podcast as we dive in on the Marvel Roundtable next week and wrap up Avengers Endgame.